Hi, I'm Chris, and we're going through this year's PSAT. We're in section 4. It's a math section. We're looking at question 35. This is a long word problem. You have a few different variables going on, and this is the type of question that is not very popular with students. I look at a question like this and I say, oh good, this one's a lot of fun, which a lot of my current students know. That means that it's probably going to be kind of challenging, which is what makes it fun. So even if we aren't a fan of these kinds of questions, pay attention to this, because I guarantee that you will have at least one on your PSAT or SAT when the time comes. You will have at least one question where you have more than one variable and you have to generate two equations from what they give you in the word problem. So let's make sure we understand how to do that. The first thing they tell us is that it's $139 collected from 25 cars and 6 trucks. So if possible, we want to try to convert that into a mathematical equation. And what I recommend doing when you have these different kinds of things, most students are used to using X and Y, but a good recommendation is to use variables that actually represent the thing you're talking about. So in this case, we're talking about cars and trucks. Let's use C and T as our variables, because that way when you solve for one, you won't have to worry about getting confused as to which is which. If you plug in X and Y into this question, at the end, if you get X equals a certain number, sometimes that takes more time for us to then go back and figure out, wait, what was X? Did that represent the cars or the trucks? What am I talking about here? So let's use C and T. We have 25 cars, which we're going to represent with 25C. And we have 6 trucks, which we're going to represent with 6T. And it's equal to 139.00. And since we're talking about dollars, I'll go ahead and add the zeros. You could write it as 139, but when you're dealing with dollars and cents, it's sometimes nice to have the 2 decimal places there so that when you combine values or add or subtract other dollar amounts, you'll have that lined up perfectly. Now let's see if we can come up with an expression from our second statement. We still have 25 cars and we have 3 trucks, and the total is going to be 119.50. So we add together our 25 cars and our 3 trucks, and that provided us with 119.50. Now to solve, what we do is we want to cancel out one of our variables, and it works out nicely that it was the same number of cars each time, because now when we subtract, when we take the difference, we can cancel out the cars. It was really only the difference in the number of trucks that accounted for this difference in the amount collected. So we subtract, which means you're going to subtract everything. Don't put a minus in front of the 25C and forget to do that for the other values. When you subtract the entire equation, everything is having its sign changed. So 25C's cancel out. 6T minus 3T gives us 3T. 139 minus 119.50 gives us 19.50. And when we divide by 3, we get T equals 6.50. So that's the cost for each truck. Now, are we done? So hopefully you said no. If you're following along in your test booklets, this question is asking us how much more each truck had to pay than each car. So we found the value for T, but to figure out that difference, we need to make sure that we plug that back in and calculate what the value for C would equal, and then take the difference between those. So when you go to plug it back in, you can plug it back into either equation. It's totally up to you. I would probably use the second equation since I'm plugging in for T. It's easier to multiply by 3 than by 6. It's just going to give you a smaller number, but either equation will work the exact same way. So when we plug it back in, we have 25C plus 3 times 650 equals 119.50. And when we do the math on that, we get 25C, plus 1950 equals 119.50. Subtract 1950, 25C equals, this will give us 100 on the nose. Divide by 25, C equals $4. So it's $4 for the cars, $6.50 for the trucks. A relatively expensive toll, if you ask me. And when we take the difference between those, which is what the question is ultimately asking for, if you take 650 and subtract 4, and I'll write that out here, it gives you 250 as your final answer for the price difference between the cars and the trucks. Now, one last thing to note on this question: whenever you're dealing with grid-in questions on the PSAT or SAT, when you're dealing with grid-in questions that ask about money, just keep in mind you don't have to grid in the dollar sign. You ignore that when gridding in your answer. And if you look on an answer sheet for the PSAT or SAT, there is no dollar sign option. So you'll just grid this in as 2.5 as your final answer. For more, please feel free to check out our other videos, and thanks for watching.